This is Thermopylae, on the coast of mainland Greece. I'm Matthew Settle. In August 480 BC, a Greek army of only 7,000 men, led by King Leonidas and 300 Spartans, fought here against a 250,000-strong invasion force, led by Xerxes, the king of Persia. At stake, the future of Greek civilization. Now, with new video game technology, you are about to see this great battle as never before. The vast numbers of soldiers, the troop formations, how they fought, and how the battle was won. Get the view the generals wished they had, now, on Decisive Battles. 2,500 years ago, Greece was not a unified nation. It was a collection of independent city-states like Athens, Corinth, and Sparta, each with their own laws and systems of government. The Greeks lived under the shadow of the mighty Persian Empire, which stretched from present-day countries like Turkey, through northern Egypt, Israel, Iran and Iraq, to Afghanistan and northern India. 2/3 of the known world. But even this was not enough for the Persian king Xerxes. He wanted to expand into Europe. Greece was the gateway. 10 years earlier, his father Darius had been defeated by the Greeks at Marathon. Xerxes was determined not to suffer the same fate. He gathered a huge army from all corners of his empire. 250,000 men set out for Greece.
Xerxes' expeditionary force to try to conquer mainland Greece was the mother of all expeditionary forces. Nothing like this had really been attempted before in the history of ancient warfare.
In 480 BC, Xerxes crossed the Hellespont and moved his army down through northern Greece, while the Persian fleet sailed along the coast. City after city fell.
Xerxes was a pretty fierce sort of guy. He wouldn't stop at anything to achieve his aims.
But Xerxes' goal was Athens. The Greeks had to stop him at all costs, and they had to do it here at Thermopylae. Otherwise, they would have a clear run to Athens.
Given the configuration of the Greek peninsula, that is where an army of any size has to come down. Thermopylae was the obvious place.
The Greek name Thermopylae means hot gates. The place was famous for its hot springs. With high rugged mountains on both sides, the narrow pass was easily defensible. But it was also the gateway to Greece. But 2,000 years of sea and wind have eroded the battle site away. This is what it looked like in 480 BC. The Greeks sent an army of 7,000 men to hold the pass. They were joined by 300 soldiers from the city of Sparta. It is impossible to imagine a city more unlike Athens than Sparta.
Spartan society was at the opposite pole from Athenian society. Athenians were very open. The society was wide open to anyone who wanted to come there, and they would share everything with us, whereas the Spartans was a very closed society.
Spartans were educated to be soldiers, nothing else. From the age of 7, all Spartan boys trained for war. The army was their life. Even when married, the Spartan men had to live in barracks. They couldn't take up any other trade. They couldn't deal in business or commerce. All ordinary work was done by slaves.
Sparta was a small town. It had no more than 9,000 peers full Spartan citizens at any one time. So this army, everybody knew everybody else. If you were standing in formation, your brother might be over there, a couple of ranks behind. Your father might be over here. Your cousins would be over there.
They provided the leadership, they provided the spearhead, they provided the backbone. In every respect, their presence was what made Thermopylae what it was.
The 300 Spartans that marched to Thermopylae were led by Leonidas, the king of Sparta. He wasn't optimistic about his chances against Xerxes. For one thing, he had set out during a Spartan religious festival. This was thought to bring bad luck. Also, the Greeks had received bad news from the oracle here at Delphi. The priestess predicted that a Spartan king would have to die before victory was won. Leonidas' wife, Gorgo, asked him what she should do if he didn't return from battle. To which he replied, "Marry a good man, have children."
He was apparently of absolute determined resolution and personally brave. He would have been in his 50s, not a young man, coming up towards retiring age, even in ancient Greek terms.
The Spartans wore a sculpted bronze breastplate and a helmet designed to terrify the enemy. Each man carried a shield shaped like a shallow wooden bowl. Painted on the face of the shield was the Greek letter lambda, for Lacedaemon, the Spartan homeland. The main weapon was a thrusting spear, wielded over-arm. 8 foot long with an ash shaft, a leaf-shaped iron head, and a bronze butt spike. In close combat, they drew the short sword, the xiphos. By contrast, King Xerxes' Persian army was lightly armed. These men were trained for fast-moving warfare on open plain. Xerxes relied heavily on the Medes, who were deadly archers. The pride of place went to his elite band of 10,000 immortals.
The immortals were the cream of the Persian army. They were recruited as an elite. The term immortal was the Greek one, which they used because they believed that every time one of the 10,000 was killed, instantly in reserve, there was another guy waiting just to step into his place.
Leonidas stood with his Spartans at the narrowest point in the pass. 7,000 Greek troops deployed behind them. They defended a low wall. Xerxes drew up his army on the flat floor of the entrance to the pass.
Xerxes waited 4 days once they got into position there because he couldn't believe that these Greeks were going to actually stand and fight. He thought it was a joke.
On the 5th day, his patience ran out. He demanded, "Surrender your weapons." Leonidas shouted back, "Come and get them."
A lone scout rider got sent by the Persians up to where the Spartans were waiting before the battle. And some of the Spartans were out there doing their gymnastics. They were oiled up and they were combing their hair. And the rider just looked, it just blew his mind. What were these guys doing? How could they be so blasé? And of course, what they really were doing was psyching themselves up to fight to the death.
Xerxes had a throne set up on a nearby hill. From several hundred feet above, he ordered his Medes into action. From their vantage point, the Greeks could only see a few thousand. This was merely the advance party for a force of 10,000 Medes, which wound round behind the mountain. Leonidas held back his Spartans and ordered the Greek troops forward. The Battle of Thermopylae had begun. It would not be the walkover that Xerxes imagined.